No idea how to break this gently, so I guess I'll just lay it out there and let you make your own judgments. I'm no monster-slaying wonderkin. I'm not a security guard or a gas station clerk. I'm not the most relatable person on the planet, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In fact, a lot of folks wouldn't really classify me as a person to begin with. I would, but I'm a little biased. I guess I should just pull out the splinter, shouldn't I? I have black hair, light brown skin, hazel eyes, weigh about 80 to 90 pounds, stand about 3'6", and while we are probably shaped the same, about half of me is cloth, plastic, and ceramic. I'm a golem if you want to be nice, or an evil doll if you want to be an asshole about it. There, I said it. Don't get the wrong impression, I'm totally made to kill, but the person who did it, they had a whole lot more rage than talent. They took a hell of a lot of shortcuts, and let's just say I'm less than the perfect killing machine. Optimally, I'd be a new entity, created from scratch with a superhuman intellect, a body that is damn near impossible to destroy, and faultless devotion to the person who created me. As it stands, my entire personality, not memories, is from some poor asshole that got kidnapped and tortured by my psychotic creator. My body is 1/5 a corpse from the same guy, with a durability to match. And honestly, while I have to follow the instructions given, it's to the letter, not the spirit. But while those instructions are beyond fucked up, my unlucky self is in the middle of something worse somehow, I think. See, my mission is to wait in the attic of this house for the next 10 years until a certain family moves in. The creator had a bit more talent with foresight than construction. At that point, I'm to terrorize the child for a couple months, then off him. No occult reason, creator's just an asshole. 3-year-old annoyed her, and that was that. But that is small potatoes compared to what is going on in the place right now. I'm 1 year into my decade-long stint. From what I was told, the house should have stayed empty till then. But a few weeks ago, when I was counting the new spiders in the attic, I heard a lot of banging and scraping coming from downstairs. I couldn't very well go down and see what was happening, so I waited until the wee hours of the night. The majority of the flesh in my body is held in my oversized head. Being that top-heavy, trying to navigate the drop stairs from the attic silently was no easy task. I hate to keep bitching here, but levitation is another thing my creator could have given me, if she decided to put in more than the minimum effort. Sure enough, the house is set up for habitation. Dated pastel furniture, an old tube television, and all kinds of knickknacks instantly tell me I'm walking through the place of an older person. The pile of pornographic VHS tapes tells me it's likely an older man. There are bookshelves, a lot of westerns, but an equal amount of books on the occult, ranging from Cole's bought garbage to a couple I swear I could feel tugging at whatever eldritch shit holds me together. Or maybe it's nerves. For some reason, I get to feel nervous. If I was going to create a murder doll, I'd like to think that I'd just make sure it couldn't get spooked out. Just my opinion though. I stand perfectly still and listen to see if whoever has taken up residence here is woken. I hear nothing, so I make my way to the kitchen. Knives. So many knives. Kitchen knives, hunting knives, combat knives, what look to be ritual knives. Just about anything with an edge and a point is on a magnetic strip, butcher blocks, or just angrily jammed into the counter. As someone who has detachable hands I can replace with knives, when there are enough blades to make me worry, something drastic is going on. I listen for another moment before making my way to the fridge. Slowly, I open the door. The harsh light from within lighting up the room. Nothing. Not an apple, a soda, or a severed human head. Just a discolored, slightly damp-smelling fridge. Not the strangest thing here, but odd. Then I hear it. An extremely soft footstep. Not at the bedroom door like I'd expect. Hearing and sight-wise, I'm pretty immaculate, necessary for my line of work. But about halfway down the stairs. I don't have a heart to skip a beat, but my eyes began to dart around looking for a place to hide. I leave the fridge door open and crab walk up the wall silently, wedging myself in the corner of the ceiling, hoping this person doesn't just turn on the lights. I'm an ambush predator, not a brawler. The guy walks into the room without a sound. I can hear snoring 4 houses away, and this guy is dead silent as he calmly scans the room. He is tall, 6'3" or so, and dressed completely in a Catholic bishop garb. His face is pale and weathered, and his eyes show about as much emotion as mine do. He scans the room like a shark, coasting from corner to corner, abruptly turning, but thankfully not looking up. I can't see his arms, but there is some strange peristaltic motion under his robes. And the longer I am around him, the more I feel dirty. Not that I understand how that is possible without skin, mind you. Eventually, he seems satisfied at the lack of intruders and makes his silent way back to his bedroom. When I'm certain this isn't just a ruse, I scuttle down the wall and back to the attic. I climb to the ceiling and lower the door just enough to squeeze through. I don't sleep, so I spend the next dozen hours running the situation through my head. See, I don't know much about the paranormal beyond my own creation. Hell, I don't know much about many things I don't need to. But I do know that something isn't right here, and in a huge way. When I hear the front door shut and a car pulling out of the driveway, I sneak back out of the attic. The place is much the same during the day, creepy, not so subtly violent, and generally having a ghost hunters meets hoarders vibe. Don't know much about the paranormal, but I know shitty cable shows. Way to prioritize, creator. What I didn't notice last night was the door to the basement. Newly painted in a deep scummy looking black, and having a myriad of locks studding one side. I walk up to it. I can barely hear something on the other side. I don't know what kind of soundproofing this guy has going on, but it must have cost him an arm and a leg. I place my head against the door with a small clink of porcelain. I can barely hear the sound of a person, obviously in distress. I listen as they scream, trying to make out exactly what they are being harmed by. I can't do it, but I have one trick I can play. My head unfolds like a rose, exposing the withered remains of the man's face, skull, and sensory organs that compose me. I'm hit with a stinging rush of input that stuns me for a moment. The head is protective, but also lets me tone down the sensory overload that comes from overclocking the eyes and ears. Suddenly, the voice is crisp and clear.
I've told you everything I know. Just end it. For God's sakes, just end it.
A male voice says, sobbing. There's a wet slithering noise and a violent ripping. The man must still be alive, though, judging by his screams.
Just stop talking, please. Just do that at least.
The man continues as a sudden high-pierced shriek makes me stumble backward, exclaiming shit. Or rather, that's what I wanted to say. My mouth is full of steel-capped pointed fangs, made for combat, not eloquence. The noise I make sounds more like an aggressive fart than English. Before I had time to get fully back to my feet, something throws itself against the door, the lock straining, barely able to hold whatever it is back. I scrambled back to the attic, hoping that whatever that was isn't smart enough to pass on any information. I spend the rest of the day deciding my course of action, and eventually I come to a decision. Likely, I'm going to have to do some screwed up stuff. I don't know if I have a soul, but if I do, my mission in life is going to guarantee it's a pretty shitty eternity regardless of whose religion is right. But maybe I can, I don't know, build some good karma, something. I know I'm what goes bump in the night, but this guy, I'm starting to think he's the fucking boogeyman. So I decide, in a very vague way, to try and do something about this. I've had a full year to get to know every nook and cranny of this house. Every angle of attack, every hiding spot, vent, and hollow wall. I might not be able to tear this guy and his partner, pet, apart, but I can do what I was made to do. Watch, learn, wait, and when the time is right, make these bastards leak. The thought of direct violence sends a surge of excitement and pleasure through me, reminding me I'm not the good thing, just a force of nature pointed in a good direction. My shoulders and hips dislocate as I slide into the vents, hands and feet rotating to let my spider-like fingers and toes propel me through the air vents. I'm silent and I'm quick. I feel more at home in the confines of the vent, more in control. I find myself hoping the bishop hears me. Maybe sticks his head up to investigate. The thought of his face shredding under my teeth, my hands plunging into his back, pushes me forward even quicker. I slow as I get to the basement vents, knowing whatever is down there can hear as good as myself. I can hear it moving though, wet and grating. The image that goes through my mind of what this thing could look like takes some wind out of my sails. I can hear its victim too, no words, just sobbing and gasping from what sounds like a broken jaw. I pause for a moment though as I hear a low chanting. I can't understand the language, but I can feel it gathering power, tugging at me, trying to sweep up whatever animates me into itself. I pull myself to the very edge of the grate. I can see the bishop's arms and the victim, but no sign of the other thing. The victim looks to be in his 20s, white guy, but I'm only guessing. His face and hands are torn to shreds of flesh and gristle, and there is a deep spurting wound in his stomach. He is strapped to a chair with what looks like barbed wire. He tries to raise his head. He tries to struggle, but he is far too gone. The fact this image makes me giddy does nothing for my budding heroism. Then it comes into view. The first thing I see is a deformed, almost cherubic head, skin stretched to its breaking point. Its eyes were little more than elongated slots showcasing angry-looking muscles behind its twitching, bloodshot eyes. Its teeth looked like two solid pieces of sharpened bone, its white tongue sliding, worm-like, over its bleeding, cracked lips. The body was pale, layers of fat and muscle overlapping, making it an opposing wall of flesh as its stubby legs stomped toward the man in the chair. Its arms were long and lean in comparison to the rest of its body, one massive brown claw extending from the middle finger of each. It puts its face inches from the man, the creature's head being almost as large as the man's torso. The bishop begins to chant louder as the monster starts to bring up one of those long brown claws to the man's throat. As the chanting reaches its zenith, the monster plunges the claw in and rips downward, spilling the man's entrails and running that long, dripping tongue over the wound. I can feel pressure in the air as the man's organs start to slide back into his body. A shimmering haze appears around the wound. Once they are back through, the body continues to collapse inward, tearing and splattering till it's a perfect fist-sized sphere of gore. Then, with a torrential amount of blood, viscera, and purple mist, it explodes. And out of that mist steps a second monster, smaller than the first, but still a horror that makes me look like a super Ted. I decide not to push my luck, scuttling back to the attic before I am seen. And that is where I'm at. It was a few days ago. I had to wait till I could get to the late 90s computer this guy owns to... What is this really? I mean, I'm hoping for advice, I guess. Barring that, just to let people know things like him and me exist. Maybe pull a Pinocchio and end up a real boy if I can save a few lives. Who knows? One of you, I hope. So it seems like my advice followed two main lines of thought: Rip and Tear and Home Alone. I've got to say, might seem like the obvious options, but that is only from the outside. The help was appreciated. I'll address some of the things brought up to help you guys be my cutmen and women. Yeah, I'm not really a brawler. I'm no teacup, but in a straight up fight, I don't know how well against demons, I guess we'll call them. As far as upgrades, well, I'll get to that in a bit. But other than that, I'm not sure that works. I don't know if I should be working out or finding an arc welder or what. I guess I'm going to have to do some experiments. Getting outside seems like a good idea. I'm going to be honest though, I have no idea what outside is like. Where I am is one of those things my creator did not feel the need to equip me with. But I guess it's obvious I'm in a residential neighborhood. Maybe garages or something could work. Which brings me to the next point. I do need to figure out more of what is going on. Truth be told, I know a lot more than I can tell you. Creator blocking me from ruining her plan. I tried to put some of this to work. Some success, some failure. Here it goes. My first setback was the lack of access to anything scarier than my teeth and the 4-inch blades I can swap out my hands for. See, the problem isn't that I wasn't well equipped this time. I actually have a regular-sized chest covered in a tarp in the attic where my creator assures me rest all kinds of implements of death tailor-made for me. It's made of a dark, splintered wood, secured with a massive iron lock with no keyhole. Faded, purposely antiqued would be a better word. Paint trying to look jaunty and creepy all at the same time reads "Tickle Trunk" in large letters on the top. The problem is, the lock has no key. It won't open for me nor anyone else until my mission begins, leaving me in a rather sad situation offense-wise. I rolled over every option I could think of. Reading the books downstairs? No idea if I'd even understand them. Contacting my creator? Not the killing demons type. Physical force? Tried and failed. These are just a few of the ideas I had before I heard the door of the house smash inward a little after midnight. I scuttle into a vent and try to figure out what's going on. I find a good angle from the floor vent and see a new oddity. The door was indeed smashed to splinters inward, steel reinforcements and thick locks twisted and mangled. Standing in the middle of this was a new person, who I had no real right to judge based on weirdness as an evil doll, but I was going to anyway. He was a stoutly built guy, mid to late 30s, close to 6 feet, square-jawed and half a dozen nasty scars across his face. His hair was cropped short, and he had on a thick brown leather bomber jacket with several hooks and holsters holding various pieces of modified weaponry. A clean white t-shirt and a pair of faded jeans, reinforced with bits of leather and steel, completed his outfit. The strangest thing about this guy, though, was his right leg. It clicked and whirred as he moved, and as I looked close, I could see the hard edges of mechanical parts show through tears in the jeans. Casually, across his left shoulder, he held a massive pump-action shotgun, the barrel welded and drilled in an aggressive pointed muzzle. In his right hand, he held a slab of sharpened steel, reminiscent of an oversized cricket bat, a yellow and black danger symbol painted on one side. He holds the shotgun one-handed and fires into the ceiling. The shot makes almost no noise, but the effect is immediate and cacophonous. A piece of the ceiling, the size of a child's pool, explodes upward, raining down plaster and wood. He walks forward with confidence, his right leg gouging and cracking the floor as he walked.
"Hey, Padre. I'm here for midnight mass,"
the man says, swinging the sword-like object into a wall, in a burst of plaster and sparks as a power line is severed. Faster than I can register, the bishop is at the top of the stairs, a smile that has no effect on his dead eyes spreading across his face.
"I was wondering how long it would take the choir boy to find me. 2 decades. That's a little long to hold a grudge, don't you think?"
the bishop says, slowly walking to the bottom of the stairs.
"This is a long time coming, old man. I've killed a lot of shit worse than you on my way here. I've become more than the result of your little party in the 90s. Choir boy? Asshole. The only thing I'm going to sing is raindrops keep falling on my head as I piss on your corpse."
And with that, the man aims and fires his gun at the bishop. The old man glides back up the stairs in a black blur.
"You think you're the first kid with a gun to come after me? You aren't even the funniest."
I notice an accent from the bishop, Dutch maybe. From under his robe, several thick white tentacles begin to snake forth. They are studded with what look to be giant jagged fingernails. He anchors them to the wall and raises his body, swaying and moving like a spider in its own web. The man smiles for a second and throws his shotgun. Somehow, as it spins towards the bishop, it fires 4 times, blowing the 4 tentacles to pieces. He catches it as he charges, slamming it into the bishop's face. The gun, upgraded as it is, stays intact, shattering one of the bishop's eye sockets, the dead orb flying across the hall. A 5th tentacle, easily twice the size of the previous one, slams into the man. He keeps his balance on the short flight down the stairs and lands, sword held at ready.
"First round to me there, your worship. Don't worry, though. I've got plenty more for the collection plate,"
the guy says with a swagger that gives me hope.
"You got me there." Don't worry though. There won't be a round 4.
The bishop says as he snaps a finger. One of the cherubic things stalks silently from the kitchen. A high-pitched hollow noise. I assume his laughter comes from deep within.
Should have known you'd have something to fight your battles. Couldn't you afford legs for this thing?
The man, who I'm thinking as the hero, says. I notice him flick a switch on the butt of a shotgun before tossing it to the ground. He draws out a bulky submachine gun. A 2-foot chain anchors it to his wrist. The gun is spiked and studded, all its fragile parts scaled up and shielded. He spins it once like a flail and grabs it by the grip, drawing the monster's attention. He looks at the bishop.
Aw, thought you'd like this toy.
He says, shifting his gaze to the monster.
But I got something you are really going to get a kick out of, big fella.
He unleashes a kick that sprays shrapnel toward the beast. It shuts its stretched, massive eyes against the debris, making itself completely vulnerable to the steel, piston-driven leg immediately behind the stinging cloud. Its jaw shatters and it stumbles backward, but the hero keeps his momentum, firing a clip from his machine gun into its chest. Then swinging the firearm in a devastating arc into the top of the creature's head. The pale gray blood sprays and rotten-looking yellow bone is exposed as the monster slams into the kitchen wall. It screams and catches the sword that blurs at his neck. The hero reloads his gun single-handed, using an ingenious little rig that fires another clip point-blank into the creature. It's hurting, but it's not out of the fight. It rips the sword from the hero's hand and unleashes a massive headbutt that sends the man to the ground, his nose a pulped ruin. The monster picks him up single-handed and tosses him back down the hallway, stomping toward him before he has a chance to rise. The man delivers a series of kicks from the ground that stun the beast, bones deep inside his twisted form breaking and splintering. He kicks up with a spray of dust and begins wildly beating the creature with his firearm. He dodges its attack, spinning and slamming the weapon into the thing. But out of nowhere, the creature spins on one arm, catching the hero off guard with a massive backhanded strike. I can almost feel his arm shatter and his ribs break as the wet cracking noise echoed through the hallway. He screams and holds his right arm as he tries to rise. The monster stalks towards him, bloodied and looking on the verge of death itself.
Wait,
the hero says, defeated. The monster lets out a high-pitched chuckle and shakes its shredded head at the hero, expecting some kind of plea for mercy. Instead, the man starts his own laugh.
Just needed a second. Thanks for that.
The hero says as a gyroscopic whining can be heard from the shotgun laying on the floor. It aims itself at the creature and fires over 24 rounds that make the effect of the first few seem petty. The monster explodes apart in wet chunks, defenseless against the torrent of lead and phosphorus. By the time the gun starts dry firing, the demon is nothing more than an ankle-deep pile of gore. The hero stands. He still seems hurt. He's breathing heavy, but is obviously running on endorphins and rage alone.
Looks like we get round 3 after all. I'm feeling it, but not enough to keep from breaking you until dawn.
He starts to limp towards the bishop, picking up his custom sword along the way.
I said no round 4.
The bishop said before whistling. As the second monster stalks forward from the basement, I realize the first must have been the smaller of the two. It casually bats aside the injured warrior's blade, and to the hero's credit, he stayed conscious for 2 roundhouse blows from the beast.
Take him downstairs. Keep the eyes. I need a new one.
The bishop says, following the monster, hero in tow, downstairs. I have a moment of indecision. Do I go back to the attic or follow them? I make my choice, scuttling my way down to the vents downstairs. The hero is strapped to a thick wooden chair and is in a groggy state of half-consciousness. The massive demon walks over looking to kill the man.
Leave him. We need to replace our losses tonight.
The bishop says, turning around with a device that looks too much like a grapefruit spoon. He walks toward the bound man and gets a face full of bloody saliva for the effort. Slowly, the bishop wipes the fluid from his face, flicking it back towards the hero. The creature masquerading as a man says nothing, simply drops the serrated spoon and continues to walk towards the hero. The valiant man struggles and curses as the bishop slowly moves his face towards the man. His lips stretch out a little too far and seal around the hero's eye socket. With a tearing noise, he sucks the man's eye from his head, seeming to savor it for a moment before spitting it into a pale claw-like hand.
Just squaring us up, fella,
the bishop says, popping the eye into his empty socket. With a couple of slow blinks, it syncs up with his remaining eye.
Now, I get to the fun part.
The bishop grins evil and motions for the demon to come over. It's holding a device that looks like a speculum that got into death metal. 2 black iron rings attached to a thick screw with an oversized crank handle. The demon opens the rings and roughly clamps them closed just above the hero's knee. The man tries to struggle and receives a punch to the stomach from a fist half the size of his torso. The hero's screams vibrate the meat inside my ceramic skull. The demon cranks the handle as the bone splinters, muscle starts to tear, and with a sickening explosive noise, the mechanical leg tears free from the man's body.
Dispose of that,
the bishop says, and immediately the demon begins to slam the leg against the cement floor. Chips of concrete and sparks fly, but there isn't so much as a scratch on the leg. The bishop sighs angrily.
You are really a pain in the ass, aren't you? Where'd you get a hold of something like that? No matter. I've got just the thing.
The bishop leaves. When he returns, he's wheeling in what appears to be a large industrial microwave. Script and symbols are gouged into the fake oak surface. As he brings it into the room, the air feels cold and sterile. The bishop plugs it into the wall with an electronic hum, and the cold, isolated feeling becomes a smothering blanket of negative emotion.
If your dumbass doesn't kill me this time, you are fucking dead, old man,
the hero says petulantly.
Such big words. No, little boy. You get to stay around for a little longer. See, you showed me I need to go a little bigger with my help. And you are the only person that can help me,
the bishop says as he picks up the leg, opening the door of the microwave. It's much too large to fit in, but does all the same. He closes the door, and an eldritch green light begins to glow through the door. The hero looks shocked, though barely conscious.
Well, that takes care of that then.
The twisted old bastard giggles as he removes the leg, now a twisted steaming stump, and drops it to the ground where it shatters like glass. I decided not to push my luck and quickly make my way back into the attic. I'm no genius, but if I'm right, that machine kills magic. The tickle trunk is magic. But what's inside, to the best of my knowledge, isn't. And without the stuff inside, my chances of solving the situation the way I was created to, with violence, is just about zero. If that one-man army couldn't do it, I have no chance. And that is where we are. A little further than before, but what should I do now? Do I try and break the guy out? Seems like he'd be a good ally, even down an eye and a leg. Or should I find a way to go through those books? Chances are, though, it's going to be a while before I can get the tickle trunk open. I think the next thing I will do will involve some supply gathering of a more mundane type. I can't tell if you guys are cold as ice or just looking out for me, but wow, leave the guy? Honestly though, probably the best decision. I was debating on telling you this, but hey, who else can I trust? I wasn't completely honest with you guys in my last post. I did really hope that that guy could take care of this problem, but I had some other feelings about the situation. I don't know why, but watching him get hurt made me giddy, energized, and I have no idea why. Was I a sick bastard before this? Something from my creator? Something else? No idea, but it makes me want to remind folks, essentially I'm a sentient weapon. And I'm somewhat scared I have less control over my actions than I think. Another major development, it's 2020? I know I should have picked up on this earlier, but I typed this stuff randomly late at night, using every sense I have to avoid getting caught. I knew I missed some time, but I was thinking we were in the late 90s by the startup BIOS information in the computer. But 2020? I don't have memories about the guy I was made from, but I do have knowledge of basic world facts and a handful of trivia. This all ends about 93. I have no clue if this means anything, but why such a long gap? Other than the errata, I'll tell you how my little trip outside the home went. If you're pressed for time, the Cliff Notes version is, it was odd. For everyone wondering about the hero, he's still alive. Barely. I spent a couple days trying to write a note or something to slip to him, but God, these hands I have are not made for detail work. Illegible doesn't begin to describe the scrawl I made. So I decided it was time for a little trip outside the house. Some of you had a few good ideas for immediate equipment till I could get the trunk open, and the first step in doing that is a little recon of the area. Luckily, there's an easy way to the roof from the attic, so getting out didn't require too much effort. Getting down was a bit harder, but the old lattice on the back wall held my weight with only minor protest. Looking around though, wow, I'm going to have to explain. My creator has cut corners making me, but has put in enough safeguards to at least make sure I get a chance to get my mission, twisted as it may be, done. What I saw when I looked around were large swaths of my vision taken up, with what looked like massive black infinitely expanding stalactites, stalagmites, and webs of all shapes and sizes, blocking streets, houses, and even just random paths. A competent creator would have been able to give me various extra senses or organs to make sure I wasn't seen or captured. Mine chose a quicker and dirtier route. Those voids represent the lines of sight and hearing of things likely to take umbrage at a sentient doll. They pulse and shift, showing whatever spell is driving them is not very exact, and I physically cannot cross them. I see a moderately clear path to a home I can actually see and decide to make my way there. I make my way there in a series of jerking, non-ergonomic movements, avoiding thin webs of void by ducking, twisting, and contorting myself in ways no human could. As I look into the distance, I notice more and more void until the horizon is just a vantablack sheet. I'm guessing I have a maximum range of some form. I take a moment to think about how disturbing my movement would look should anyone be able to see me. Not that I'd make a very comforting sight walking in any fashion. I easily climb the fence leading into the backyard. I hear no one in the home and I start to crawl my way up to the garage, hoping to find some tools or a firearm I could take back to begin a stockpile. I must have been too concerned with wedging my way between the lines of sight, as I only noticed the heavy breathing once it was 25 feet away from me. A thick-built bulldog, easily matching my 90 pounds, standing there growling. I have no time to think about the situation as it charges me. I force myself through the void webs as fast as I can, the dog inches behind me, and I almost make it to the fence before it clamps its massive wizard sleeve of a face onto my leg. No meeting there, thankfully. And for all her faults, the creator did give me enough reinforcement to deal with something like this. That being said, leverage, momentum, and I'm guessing steroids are letting it toss me around like a, no pun intended, ragdoll. Intentionally or not, it starts to slam me against the fence. That hurts in a hurry. I feel the shock in all the fleshy parts of me as I'm slammed over and over again into the solid wood. Animal lovers, skip ahead a couple paragraphs. I try and get one of my blades out, but find out they must be more mechanical than mystical. As I get slammed into the wall, the mechanism that retracts them keeps engaging, making them next to useless. So instead, I go caveman, no tools, no mercy. I reach out and sink my ceramic fingers deep into the dog's eye. They might not be made for calligraphy, but they do this kind of work just fine. My momentum tears the eye from its socket and the dog howls in pain, launching me in a high arc over the fence, followed by a thin spray of dog blood and ocular fluid. The void webs hit me as hard as any real obstacle, and I go on a spinning, erratic path, bouncing and tumbling as I land. I try to stop myself, but I'm in a supremely uncontrollable landing, going down a hill judging by the fact that I seem to be gaining speed instead of losing it. I can't get my bearings until I slam to an instant stop against a massive tree. I'm physically fine, but I have no idea where the hell I ended up, besides quite a ways into a scraggly forest. I look around, trying to find a way back to my attic, but between the trees and the void webs, I can see just about nothing past the tree line. I attempt a series of frustrated cursing. It's expressed as a series of gurgles, growls, and clicking noises. I pick a direction and begin to walk, figuring even at my stature, this forest can't be that expansive. The branches and litter are thankfully less of a pain in the ass than the void webs, but being 3 foot something and mostly head doesn't make for an easy time navigating undergrowth. I hear something in the distance, muffled noises, leaves rustling, branches breaking. My original idea is that I found a couple of folks engaged in a semi-public tryst. Thinking to follow them out after their congress, I make my way towards the sound. What I saw was most certainly not folks getting ready to bang. 2 sentient things stand in front of me after a few minutes of walking toward the noises. One is a rather nondescript man, mid-20s, curly hair, and trying his best to scream while being held by the face by a second entity. It stood 9 feet tall, lanky, pale, with clear red claws that would give hunting knives feelings of inadequacy. Its face looks long and featureless at first, but as I look close, its features are just moved significantly low on its face. Eyes starting where a mouth would be, and a thin, massive set of lips starting right below its neck. It wore a torn and faded brown suit that covered maybe half down its limbs, and left vast swaths of its pale flesh exposed. As it moved, it appeared to leave smoke trails, but instead of dissipating, it fell, snow-like to the ground. For some reason, it reminded me of cotton candy.
The hell?
It says in a suitably dark and breathless voice. Its head turns 180 degrees to face me.
For the love of... Are you a golem or a homunculus?
It asks. I fall to the ground doing a perfect imitation of a normal doll, albeit too late.
What? I just watched you do that. I know you're alive.
I stay still for another couple moments, bluffing.
For the record, I'm embarrassed for you.
He finishes. I give in and stand up, brushing myself off.
Golem, I think.
I say, walking over. The man the massive creature is holding starts to scream louder as he sees me enter the already fatal situation.
You think? What kind of answer is that? Is there a chunk of flesh in there? And if so, is it human?
He seemed a little annoyed, but not aggressive. Something hits me.
How did you understand me?
I say, accidentally avoiding his question.
How did I not? You have a bit of a construct accent, but it's English. Seriously though, you have some human chunks in there. Kind of time sensitive here.
He says, gesturing to the man he is holding.
Yeah, brain, eyes, some muscles, about 90 pounds-ish worth.
I say tentatively.
For Christ's sake. Well, first off, that makes you homunculus, not a golem. Which makes what I'm doing here just fucking useless.
The elongated creature puts the man down.
Okay, buddy. You're probably the luckiest person on Earth. You see that little guy? He's just made eating you useless to me. I could kill you, but honestly, it's a time waster at this point. So I'm letting you go. Now, if you get any cute ideas about telling folks about this, or coming after me, I want to show you something that will make you think twice before taking that course of action.
At this point, the suit-wearing thing grabs the man's arm and twists. The bones splinter and pop out at random angles in a burst of fat and blood. The man screams for a second before the creature puts his face inches from his, silencing him by placing one razor-sharp crystalline claw on the man's lips.
You humans have short memories, and chances are after a few months you'd have done something stupid. But remember how this felt, how easily I broke you. But more importantly, after you eat this.
The creature produces an old-looking hard candy in a red and green wrapper.
And your flesh knits itself better than any surgeon could. Remember, that is the least of my power. I don't need to rend you. I could tear your body and soul apart from across the fucking world if you piss me off. Now, run.
It finishes, roughly shoving the man away. The man doesn't look back, and within a few seconds is lost within the forest.
So what brings you out here ruining my dinner? Name's Kaz, by the way.
The creature says, taking a seat on a fallen tree. I know this might not have been the smartest thing to do, but I told him the entire story. As much as I physically could, anyway. He could probably destroy me if he wanted to, and didn't seem too desperate for details, so I figured I could trust him.
Okay. And after all that, your plan is to try and, what? Be some kind of nice guy? Why?
Kaz says, amused and shaking his head.
Why not?
I say as a choking cough.
The fact you literally run on killing innocent folk? See, if you were a golem, you could screw off. Go set up a donut shop in Alaska with the right plan. But you've been given a little more energy than your job requires. But after that, barring some maintenance, you burn out if you don't get some notches on your blade. And in your case, they need to be innocent, and preferably kids.
Kaz lights up a cigarette.
Which is ironic considering the dumbass legend centering around my breed.
I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Besides stature, nothing's stopping me from taking out those things in my house.
I say with unearned confidence.
Someone must have been listening to a podcast when they made you, weren't they? I have no love for malignants, though. That's the big thing that priest is bringing in. What is he? God? No idea. Probably just some try-hard human who is fucking around with the void. But if he thinks he's going to control those things forever, he's an idiot. I don't want to get involved, but I have some advice. The guy in the basement, we call them heroes. They are mysterious, but they tend to have just a little touch of the void themselves. Explains the leg of his, probably made it himself. You want to buff up? Kill him, and kill him slow. And this meeting place for our kind, the flea market. If you can't find something there for pest removal, you didn't bring enough to trade.
He gives me a gold card with an address on it.
Can I ask you for one last favor? A ride home, for lack of a better term?
I say, raising my hands like a toddler. He sighs as he picks me up. We both remain silent as he drops me into the backyard of the house I'm tethered to for the next decade. A quick climb and I'm back into the attic doing my best to remove the dirt, blood, and debris from my clothing. I barely get 5 minutes before I hear the screams of multiple people from the basement. I'm beginning to know every twist and turn of the vents, and am down, silently, and quickly enough to see the giant malignant drag 2 people into the room, where the hero is still tied to the chair, clinging to life. The bishop follows close behind, a massive rotten-toothed grin spreading on his face.
You thought I wouldn't go looking for your backup, kid?
The bishop says, shaking his head. The 2 people look to be in their mid-20s, twin buff guys dressed in camo pants and black shirts. They are badly beaten, but still alive.
We're sorry, man. He came up out of nowhere.
The one on the left says to the hero. The bishop cracks one of his tentacles like a whip, and a massive strip of flesh is flensed from the chest of the twin that spoke.
I'd say shut up and I'd make this easier. But I won't. Talk again, and I go after that mother of yours and Hammersmith you think is safe. Choir boy, you've been here before, haven't you? 2 friends. You, helpless. Me, having the time of my life. But you thought this time would be different. You and your special leg.
The bishop laughs long past the point of humor.
I'm not dead yet.
The hero says, staring at the ground.
But you know what's coming. And that's even better. So, same choice as last time. Do you do it? Or do I?
The bishop slowly draws out the sentence as his rictus grin spreads further than humanly possible.
The same answer as last time. Go fuck yourself. With the side order of you better kill me. You wood boot horse meat eating tulip fucker.
The hero says, his gaze never leaving the floor.
Thought you would have learned by now. Very well. But you get to watch.
The bishop says as the giant malignant walks behind the hero. It yanks his head upwards and with two massive fingers pulls back the hero's eyelids until drops of blood start to drip from the torn sides. The bishop starts to chant in a language that speaks to that eldritch, unnatural part of me as he walks to stand in front of the hero, one of the twins on either side. As he begins to chant louder, I can see horrific, bulbous forms start to strain from within the twin's stomach. They double over, but are held aloft via forces I cannot see. The twins' bones start to snap and deform, creating spines, hooks, and horns. The men are crying at this point, and amazingly, still try to apologize to the hero. Their fluids pool on the floor and start to run in rivets to form twisting, looping symbols that beg me to join in the slaughter. As his chant reaches a crescendo, the bishop rams his hands down the throat of the twins. Jaws buckling, throats tearing, eyes straining to stay in deformed skulls. He yanks his hands backwards, and in a spray of gore and gray swelling mist, both men are violently turned inside out. Their bodies hit the ground with the wet thump of dead flesh. But not for long. Slowly, the twins rise, reborn of horrors of raw muscle and bone shards, leather organs wrapped around them like armor. Their eyes, though, they retain a scared, panic-stricken look.
Same as before, choir boy. You couldn't do it, so I did. And now, not only did you lose 2 friends, I got 2 friends.
The bishop says as the twins move behind him. The massive cherubic malignant lets the hero's head fall. I hear nothing, but I see tears falling as freely as the blood hits the floor. I realize at this point, one of the twins is looking directly at the vent I'm hiding in. I have no idea if it saw me, or could communicate this fact if it did, but I scuttle as fast as possible back to the attic. I'm in no rush to find out. And that leaves me here, a couple days later, with the building anxiety that this happy group kicking in the attic door. A lot to digest, I know, but what do you think? Should I accept my fate to be a killing machine, or should I spit in the face of cold reason? And do I check out this flea market? How much can I trust Kaz? In case anyone is wondering, I'm typing this from the security of the attic with my very first smartphone. Well, it's not mine per se, but it's mine now. That's what's important. Maybe being a bit more relaxed will help me relate myself a bit better. I'd be a fan of that. The past few days, even by my standards, have been just odd and violent, but that part goes without saying. Looks like more and more people are trying to help me out. Much appreciated, as always. Here's a little feedback for you, and a couple of questions. First off, why does everyone seem to know more about this flea market than I do? I'd have thought getting these things firsthand from something that looked like Pumpkinhead's church-going cousin would have put me at an advantage, but you guys seem to know what's up better than I do. I'm going to hazard a guess that it has something to do with the fact that there is certain information I just can't see. That same Vantablack that blocks my travels censors out all kinds of things. I'd tell you what, but you know, the worst part of censorship is, you know. Doesn't seem to work with secondhand info though, not yet anyway. I'm chalking that up to my creator's community college level sorcery skills, so please, if you know something I don't, pass it on. Second, you guys seem to have pretty high hopes for my morals. I expected a group of random folks to be telling me to slaughter the neighborhood with a hero's skull for shits and giggles. But it seems things have gotten a little less edgy since the 90s. Probably not a bad thing. Lastly, you guys seem to think Kaz can help me out quite a bit. Gotta say, he did seem like fear incarnate. I'll keep that in mind. If I missed you, it's probably because I took your advice, and I'll be getting to it in a minute. The headline of the past couple weeks is the entire goon squad piling into their literal hearse and taking off. The bishop seemed to have packed a couple suitcases, so I assumed I was going to have a few days at least. But to play it safe, I spent the first day in the attic. I'm still nervous about the glance the twin and I exchanged, and not about to get caught in a trap invented by paranoid parents. A little after 1 on the second night, I hear what I initially think is the bishop and the 3 pawns. Better name? Worse? But as I focus, I hear 5 voices whispering, and most certainly sounding nothing like what stalks the night with any degree of real skill. A window breaks, and I smell it. I know most of you think of me as a good guy. I mean, I'm pretty sure someone is working on making a plushie or a body pillow of me as we speak. I have so many questions about fads in 2020. But there are going to be times you get a deep, uncomfortable look into the vile crap hastily sewn together that is me. This is one of those times. What I smelled was innocence, and with it, I gained an understanding, a look into what my base drive is. I'd love to say I didn't like it, to say what I felt was a vile compulsion, but the truth is, that's not how it feels. It's exciting, it's primal, and on a very real level, it feeds me. With that first whiff, I understood innocence. It's not perfect or young, chaste or naive. It's complicated, of course, but at its core, it does things for the right reason. Having that spark of human kindness, loyalty, and selflessness, even among flaws that may appear irredeemable to some. 2 of those men had it. 3 of those men were acceptable collateral damage. Nothing in me, meat, cloth, or magic feels any differently. I respect you all too much to lie. I start to salivate, the fluid pulling and dripping out of the bottom of the ceramic head. I feel power. I feel confidence. It's dark. It's my house. And they are not demons or heroes, just meat. I can feel my body twitch and thrum like a guitar string as they come into the house one by one. They split up, trying to ransack the place as quickly as they can. I laugh, a clicking, phlegmatic sound I find myself hoping they can hear as I run toward a vent, jumping down into it with no regard for the minor noise I make. In fact, I extend one blade and drag it along the duct. As they hear the sound, I can feel their fear. I can feel where they are, like a hellish radar. The closest to me has no innocence in him. I smell crimes committed for pure greed and rage. That doesn't matter though. I need to warm up. I've spent so much time sneaking and cowering. I need to see what I can do. I settle myself enough to open the vent without attracting attention. The large mask-wearing man rifles through drawers, looking frustrated as he finds nothing better than a 25-year-old computer errata. My limbs move almost on their own accord. I climb with a spider's grace directly above the man. There would have been a million ways to drop on him and kill him in an instant, but my mind went to none of those. Instead, I let the ceramic headpiece unfold. Thick, red-gray saliva hits the top of his mask. He jumps and turns towards the ceiling, shining a high-powered flashlight in my face. It doesn't matter. I know exactly where he is, and I get a giddy charge from the burst of fear that runs through his body as he sees my face. I let go and extend both of my blades. Nothing to hack down a demon, but stout and sharp enough to slide easily through the man's eyes, the sockets behind them, and propelled by my momentum, the brain behind that. He makes no noise, but both of our bodies hitting the floor most certainly does. I rip my arms, shoulder deep in gore, out of his head and take a moment to admire the spewing cavern of his face. I hear another man come running, another empty snack, but I'm more than eager to whet my appetite. I run to the door and place my back to the wall beside it. The second man, a wiry guy in his 40s wearing no mask but a mustache that would have been Coleman 93, walks by me and screams as he sees his compatriot. I walk behind him and drive both blade tips down into his Achilles tendons. Putting all my weight and strength into it, I tear upward, the blades catching flesh, tendon, and fat, tearing them out as a formless lump. He hits the ground, wailing in terror and pain. I can hear one of the group immediately leave his compatriots. I'm angered as I feel it was one of the innocent. I take this out on the thief screaming on the ground. I climb on his body facing the door. I'm stunned at how easily these instincts come to me, and at how much I'm loving this. He tries to see what is on his back, but he has no leverage to throw me off. I vent my rage by stabbing randomly, almost playfully up and down his torso. By the time the last two enter, he isn't dead, but he isn't coming back. I stare at the men as I petulantly stab the last 3 times, shut the headpiece with a snap, and leap with greased eel speed into a floor vent. They scream at the situation, at each other, at their dying friend, and I hear the telltale noise of a gun cocking. I'm not scared, it makes me laugh. I let the sound echo through the vents as I move randomly, stroking their fear, their paranoia. I stop and watch them back down the hallway from a ceiling vent. I pant with anticipation as I confirm the innocent has the gun. I scrape the knife, hurting them to the top of the stairs. The gun-toting buffet fires randomly, coming nowhere close to hitting me. I move to a vent between the two, letting the silence ring, letting them ramble possible plans and explanations to each other. I drop, putting them between myself and the stairs. With no room to aim and nerves frayed thin, the innocent man, a 23-year-old single father, working 2 jobs and doing this under duress, fires rapidly and poorly. Soup can-sized chunks blow out of his friend's back as the bullets exit. I do nothing to speed the man's fate. I stand in the hallway, letting the young man's shock and fear marinate his coming pain. He sees me and fires his 2 remaining shots, doing nothing more than sending harmless sprays of hardwood into my mask. He is stunned, but not enough to avoid making a break for it when I start a slow walk towards him, scraping one blade along my ceramic head, making a hellish screech. He stumbles down the stairs and I leap. I overestimate my ability and land, grabbing his waist from behind as opposed to his head. I jam my blade into the side of his leg with the rapidity of a sewing machine, and as the steel buries itself into his flesh, I feel it, the pain of the innocent. I don't know if I'll be able to explain this in any way that makes sense, but I'll try. You know that false rush of strength and bravado you hear cocaine users rant about? That high that makes you feel like you could fight and fuck all night? Like both at the same time? Think of that, but instead of false promises, you were actually stronger, faster, smarter, instead of a twitchy loser who isn't making sense and can't get it up. I roar. A sound like a rock tumbler with strep throat. He tries to grab me and throw me off, but I retract a blade and grab his hand, easily twisting the wrist to a degree the man falls to the floor. Nothing I could do before the kick start. He tries to slam me into the ground, but I drive my legs into his back, briefly lifting him up as I move both of my hands perpendicular to the ground, parallel to my legs. I let my legs drop to the ground. The man's body falls, driving my blades through his chest. He looks to them, screaming as I find myself with the strength to throw him off of me. I don't want to sugarcoat things, but I don't want to subject you guys to too much of this shit either. The next 10 minutes I spent with my head unfolded eating chunks of the guy, till the life finally bled from him. When the frenzy burned itself out, it was my turn to be startled. Standing in the kitchen door, leaning against the frame, holding a pistol and the phone I'm typing this on, was the hero. He didn't blink, the gun didn't waver. He simply threw the cell phone to me. It was open to a blank screen with a flashing cursor.
You have about 10 seconds to tell me something that makes me not shoot you to feel better about myself. You only get that because I know you aren't working with the squarehead.
He says. I'll spare you the part where I catch him up via the notepad. It was tense, to the point where a shot was fired. But at the end of it all, we realized, regardless of who was lying about what, we both needed a hand. We dragged the bodies down the stairs, mostly me, for obvious leg-related reasons. I find myself, now, a lot stronger than your average person, but I can feel that power draining by the second. By my guess, it'll be burned out within a day, not the buff I was expecting.
I'll take care of these. That salted licorice prick isn't the only one who knows how to use that microwave. Listen, I'm gonna call you Punch. That alright?
The hero says, taking a seat in his gore-streaked chair. As I look around the room, they did leave him 3 buckets. One contained waste, the other a pile of what was hopefully animal offal, and the third, water that wasn't much more clear than my spit.
Okay, Punch. I've been burned by supernatural shit before, but what choice do I have? You ever seen The Godfather?
He asked. I nod. He hands me the pistol, a large boxy black thing.
Then you know what to do. I don't know how long we have, but if you are planning on going to the flea market, do it soon. Once it's go time, I'll let you know. And one more thing. If you have any ability to get me a burger, maybe a soda, I can honestly say I'll forgive the slaughter up there.
He tries to be jovial, but we are both beyond that. I scavenge the cash, cell phones, and 2 more pistols from the bodies, hoping it will be enough to trade for something useful. The next night, once dark fell, I quickly looked up the address on the card, with some help from the hero. His name was Leonard for all those wondering, and started towards it. From a distance, I saw nothing but a vacant lot across from the flea market, which made me start thinking maybe Leo didn't know how to work the phone as well as he claimed, and my destination was on the other side of the street. But as I got within a block of the lot, suddenly there was a building too tall to be held up by brick and mortar. Bricks of all types haphazardly put together, and windows ranging from idyllic home to prison, studding it randomly. Dominating the front of the building was a giant LED sign flashing flea market in erratic patterns. I make my way to a massive tinted glass door that I'm unsure I can move as the last of the innocent wore off sooner than I expected. But as I walk up, a smaller door, sized perfectly for me, appeared. This one I opened with ease. As I walked in, I suddenly felt very normal and mundane. Creatures, entities, ghosts, demons, whatever you could think of, it was walking the shoddy-looking aisles, browsing, chatting, and bargaining. Dozens of languages no humans have ever spoke, blended together with hundreds they have into a cacophonic den that threatened to drown out my thoughts. The air hung thick with the sweet smoke, lights flashed, loudspeakers screamed deals. I saw signs for weapons, food, goods, anything I could think of. But I saw something else even more important.
Kaz, over here!
I scream, seeing the Candyman a few dozen feet away. For a moment, I think I have no chance of attracting his attention. But eventually, he turns around and seems to laugh and shake his head as he walks over. He takes us into a moderately more quiet part of the flea market. All kinds of entities sit along the tables, eating and conversing. We sit beside a group of purple, wicked-looking things eating thin strands of fluorescent foodstuffs with fingers that looked like the fronds of an anglerfish.
You little madman. You are actually going through with this. Do you even know where to go? What are you buying?
He asked curiously.
I'm a genius, so I'll go to weapons and get a weapon.
I say sarcastically.
How many weapons do you think are made for little fellas like yourself? No, you need an adult. I'll show you where you can make your bad decision.
I'd be more angry at Kaz's condescension if he wasn't right. He walks me for what feels like hours to what looks like the most run-down junk shop of a stall in this place. The painted sign on wood that looks as if it was salvaged from the Titanic says, "Flap and Hive, the oddest odds and ends." Behind the junk-laden counter stood a massive bird-like beast. It was a deep rotten orange that reminded me of a tangerine left in a gutter. Its beak was a harsh, unnatural yellow. Its eyes, much too large for its head, sat exposed and rolling about their own accord on the top of its head. It was 7 feet of nightmare fuel dredged from childhood memories. I almost mistook the second entity for a piece of junk, but who am I to judge? It was a knockoff Stretch Man toy, wearing a black unitard, bloated beyond reason. It stands up and vermin scuttle from the tears of its latex body.
Flap and Hive?
I try to start things off on the right foot.
We got a homunculus here, Hive. Speak slowly and don't use big words.
The bird says.
That's how I have to talk to you. But this is a customer. How can I help you? Ignore my friend. He seems to think his shining personality pays our rent.
Hive says. I tell him my situation. Hive seems to take a special interest when I mention the malignant. He scrounges around the junk and brings out 2 items. One is a green glass eye, about sized for a doll. The other looks like a keychain with a small decorative sword on it.
This eye, it'll let you go unnoticed. Not shimmering outline invisible, but unseen, unheard, and unnoticed by any sense anything has. This keychain, if you can get a malignant to touch it, I can guarantee it won't be bothering you anymore.
There are some letters on the side of the sword. Batter. I open my bag of cash, guns, and phones to a massive laugh from Flap.
Shoot yourself with one of those guns. And if you survive, take that money, buy a dildo, and go fuck yourself. Get out of my shop.
Flap says dismissively. There's a moment of pregnant silence before Hive stretches out a limb faster than a cobra. And despite his 5-pound size, the blow sends the bird crashing to the ground. It gets up, chagrined but amazingly not hurt.
That'll be fine. My kind have been nothing but especially cruel to me. But I'm very limited in how I can exact my revenge. If you can put a scratch on any of them, that makes up for any loss of finance. Though, there is one thing you are not going to enjoy. This eye is a part. It has to be installed.
Hive says before leading me back into the shop. The room looks like a cross between a wood shop and a surgical theater. I'm strapped, completely immobile on a dark wood table. Hive brings out a tool that radiates an energy that puts anything I felt to shame. He opens my head and begins to slice, flinch, and form the flesh underneath. The pain was worse than anything I thought possible. Worse than the trauma to the meat that makes up my internals. The tool works on a level that is beyond the physical, tearing parts of my very essence to connect with the jade eye he implants in what could generously be considered my forehead. When I get off the table, I do what Hive tells me, focusing on the eye. I see and feel myself becoming nothing more than the whisper of an idea of a form on the material plane. I make my way home, casually, doing everything I could to try and get noticed, to no avail. And that is where we are, a handful of shaky alliances, a surgery I hope has no side effects, and a keychain I've been assured kills demons. As always, I ask you guys, what do you think? I've got so many plates spinning right now, I can only hope I'm making the right choices. Before I go, I want to apologize to the people that have been cheering for me. I could have just omitted the details, but you guys deserve better than that. I just want to say, being undetectable is exactly as fun as you'd think it is. No, I didn't do anything pervy, not really equipped for that. On that note, got to find out I don't have a digestive system either. All that flesh felt a lot worse coming up, rotten and slimier than it did going down. And I've managed to avoid doing anything evil with it, but come on, it's a fun toy to play with no matter what. I'm upbeat because I'm nervous. Currently, we are hours away from go time, and overprepared is not how I'd describe my merry group. I'm going to tell you how we got here, but first, as always, let's see what folks have been saying. You guys have kept me alive this long, I can't turn my back on you now. To the guy who was smart enough to check his house for me, good on you, buddy. This paranormal shit tends to like coincidence and connection. And hell yes, chuck me into a furnace if you find me. This isn't some release me from my torment kind of thing either. I don't necessarily mind this. Even the parts where I'm making you folks question your support. Sad to say, but I'm not made to love. No, I've just grown to like you folks. And at the end of the day, I'm a homemade weapon that isn't going to get any safer as time goes on. Getting Kaz and Leo together? Oh, I'm on that. And there are other folks like me out there? I mean, I've met entities, obviously, but I'm assuming not everyone has its own scary story. I wonder what the common threads are. As I just said, this paranormal shit loves its connections and serendipity. Now, I took a lot of advice, and while honestly I get the feeling having Kaz and Leo in the same room is a horrible idea, you guys seem to live and breathe this stuff almost as much as I do, so I trust you. I figured between the three of us we had enough amped up senses to hear the coffin crew coming. That sounds like a professional vaping team, I know, but I'm an evil doll, not a marketing executive. So I broached the topic of a meeting of the minds. He sat there on the old leather couch in the living room, shaking his head before responding.
First of all, would have been smart to tell me that before I got rid of those bodies. Second, that is a horrible idea. You might be friends with that thing, but he skips lunch and suddenly I'm getting a look at my guts.
Leo says. I notice he's sporting a new leg. It's quite a bit more low-tech than the first. It's clearly a leg from one of the robbers, a little too long and haphazardly reinforced with a few screws and wires. But somehow, it seems to function a bit. He catches me staring.
Necromancy is a neutral art. For example, if your friend has a white or something, it'd be a 50-50 chance he's an asshole or psychopath. And besides, I know like 2 necromantic projects.
He says a little defensively.
A Candyman though? No. Not something that is physically capable of playing well with humans.
He finishes. Now there was actually a long, involved conversation, via my phone on my end, in regards to relative morality, tactical risk, a balanced team, and a bunch of other dry, important topics. But for the sake of a little humor, before things get morbid, pretend it was a star wipe into Kaz and Leo arguing.
You want to bring another malignant into the situation? Really? Ha 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 ha!
Leo yells, sarcastically chuckling.
Yes, actually, he owes me a favor and could level a city block if he really wanted to.
Kaz retorts.
That makes me feel the opposite of better. My issue isn't with lack of punch. It's with something that can level a city block, inserting itself into an already high-stakes situation.
Leo says, slowly trying to remain calm.
Oh, and your alt-right, tinfoil hat-wearing, lizard-person-fearing gun nut is a better option?
Kaz spits.
You don't know anything about him, Sugar Nuts. He is a graysmith. He's not some militia asshole. He makes the shit that lets people like me survive things like you.
Leo says in a condescending fashion.
I know his type. Got sick of supplying regular people with regular ways to kill each other. Needed more of a thrill, so he started using powers beyond his grasp to make worse things to sell to more unstable people. Let me guess, Alex Jones fan. 10 guns in every room, gets paid in Bitcoin, isn't racist. Am I close? I bet I'm close. And that Graysmith name? Half of them aren't even Graysmiths. And half of those who are just genocidal twats.
Kaz's massive mouth extends into a shoulder-to-shoulder smirk. Leo takes a step forward. I stomp my feet on the ground to get their attention, hoping to stop the situation going tribal.
Maybe we don't even need backup. The chest could change things.
I add, trying to defuse the situation.
For the love of... Have you not seen the pattern? Whoever made you skip class half the time by the looks of it, that trunk is going to have some spooky semi-functional garbage that is going to make you look real edgy but not do jack shit.
Leo waves his hand dismissively as he says this.
Yes, all problems just need a bigger gun with more blades welded to it, right?
Kaz goes to say more and I stop him with a kick to the shin. He looks at me, face full of rage.
The adults are talking. Just stay out of it, you goddamn pipe bomb.
Kaz screams, and suddenly both him and Leo go silent. Leo breaks the silence first, giggling, then laughing, then full-on collapsing on the couch with fits of giggles. All the time, Kaz is suddenly apologizing profusely.
Look at Mr. Monster Pride. Mr. We have just a valid society, dropping P-bombs like they are going out of style.
Leo cannot continue as he starts laughing again.
I'm sorry. I'm old, I'm frustrated, and I'm in over my head, just as much as anyone else here. That's not who I am. We aren't in the 1800s anymore. I know. I'm sorry.
Kaz won't meet my eyes. I'm not offended, but at least this seems to be calming things down.
Oh my god. I can't stop laughing. Maybe you have a little human in you after all. Dice Clay here, not giving a shit what people think. How about we try the trunk? At least that will take an option off the table.
Leo says, wiping tears from his eyes. Leo and Kaz brought the trunk down to the basement, and despite the fact that it fit into the microwave thing, turning it on did nothing more than give us all sudden suicidal thoughts. Kaz acquiesced and let Leo call his friend JP. When this gentleman showed up, I thought maybe Kaz had precognition in his bag of tricks. He was in his mid-40s, wearing brown cargo pants and a Deus Vault sleeveless shirt. He was bald, likely not by choice, with a muffin top and a pair of Doc Marten boots. I didn't see a tinfoil hat, but the giant joint in his ear was a good substitute, and his thick leather bracelet screamed of compensation.
Holy fuck. Never thought I'd see one of you up close.
JP says, poking Kaz.
Could we move this along, sir?
Kaz says, holding back rage. JP puts down a large black suitcase, opens it, and lights the joint. After this, he takes an odd obsidian tool, reminiscent of an awl, in his free hands and starts prodding the lock.
Put that out. If this place smells like a stoner's armpit, it's going to give us away, JP, and you've already made it smell like an armpit.
Leo chides his friend.
Half of this is an anti-void herbal mixture, which costs 10 times what we did. Personally, I'd rather make sure we aren't being watched, but that's just crazy old JP, who everyone seems to need.
JP blows the smoke directly at Leo. After a few hours and a lot of borderline not okay conversations about minorities, he manages to pop the trunk. There were 2 black leather bags in the box. The first we open is exactly what Leo thought. A couple heavier blades, a steel top hat with a sharpened rim, and a bunch of other flea market crap. The second had a small sheet of paper taped to it. The beautiful cursive writing reads as follows.
M-fused alchemical homunculus proxy. Prototype 2. Dear Milford, this isn't to be used unless the mission is in severe danger. It's untested, but should be more than enough to cut down a few armed humans between you and the kid. Love, Angela.
The thing inside made me look downright comforting. It was 4 feet of black and white mange-ridden fur. I recognized it immediately as a Sammy the Skunk brand doll. It was popular in the 90s. Its shtick was it used pre-recorded tapes to mimic talking, but this one was not factory standard. All its joints were reinforced with overlapping bone. It had long pointed teeth, obviously ripped from some predator, and behind the tail, where the tape deck should be, were racks of multicolored fluids. The tail itself was studded with blades that were rivaled only by the conical claws of its hands and feet. Instinctively, I found the deep red on button, and as I pressed it, I felt my mind thin and stretch, some vital part of me siphoned off. It was disorienting for a minute, but I quickly adapted and found myself in control of the contraption. Most of its functions were done automatically. All I had to do was will it to be done, one way or the other. I wasn't a fighter ace, but after a couple hours, I was confident I could point it in a direction and scream kill with a degree of efficiency. We had a sparring match. JP's payment for opening the trunk was to watch, between me controlling the skunk and Kaz. I didn't win, but it was a hard-fought tie, much more than I'd be capable of unaided. We brought the contents of the trunk up to the attic, and as I shut down the skunk, my mind started to go back to full speed. Kaz gave me his number for when it was go time and promised to have his backup on speed dial. Additionally, he promised Leo something to remedy his leg situation when he came by. Does anyone else feel things have been going uncharacteristically good for me so far? Don't worry, it changes. Leo and I repair the house to what we hope is an identical state. I spent my free time practicing with the proxy and trying out the little baubles that came with it. But the one-eyed Wonder Weasel and his 3 balls came back in the wee hours one morning, and they brought company. About 24 20-somethings all wearing identical sweatpants and yellow shirts. They are hurt and arrive in 4 hearses driven by the Lovecraft lads. I liked that one. How about you guys? all of them bleeding and missing pieces, shuffle in a single file into the basement. For a minute, I wonder how the bishop has the balls to do this in the open. Then I see a faint shimmering around the group. Context dictates to me that no one is supposed to see these guys going in. I flick on my own invisibility and trust in it to let me follow directly behind them. I get a feeling that something very bad is going down and want to be able to get Kaz involved as quickly as possible. The bishop and the malignant herd them into a room that has no business being as large as it is. From the ceiling are enough thin wires to wrap around the midsection of each human. They feed through rusted pulleys and hooks to a handle made of several fused bones. The evil pricks tie them around the stomach, one by one, chittering, laughing, and taking the odd piece of flesh, terrifying the poor victims beyond reason. Some beg, some plead, some offer to serve. None are listened to. Lastly, they drag Leo into the center of the room, directly in front of the bishop.
Didn't even have the guts to kill yourself, eh? Well, you get to see, once again, how you thinking you are the man with the big balls gets people killed.
The bishop says. He starts to chant. A breeze from nowhere starts to stir the room as the bishop begins to pull on the handle. The victims raise, cuts digging inch by inch into them. He starts to get louder, punctuating his incantation by roughly jerking the handle, adding a burst of volume and raining gore that sends an arctic blast through the room. As the victims reach the ceiling, hoarfrost begins to cover every surface in the room. With a final massive tug, he bisects the victims in unison. More gore than is possible rains down. Minutes of blood and bones storming in the room before leaving an eerie silence, broken only by erratic drops. In the room stands 20 impish creatures. 3 feet of boils, pus, and more clawed appendages than any creature strictly needs. Their charcoal gray skin undulates with ropey muscle, and their stench is sulfur and iron.
2 more things, choir boy.
The bishop says.
The first is that was the last thing you'll ever see.
Abruptly, he rips the remaining eye from Leo's head and starts examining it. He squeezes it a bit, and suddenly, a white-hot flare of fire and arcing static shoots from the eye.
That would have been helpful, wouldn't it? For the record, shot to the head with that, you'd be walking out. The second thing, though.
The bishop lowers his voice, putting his face next to Leo's ear.
You never bothered to check for security cameras. You oblivious fucking child. I've been watching.
I run, getting to the attic and dialing Kaz as soon as possible. And that is where I am. I guess if this goes as bad as it's looking, this will be the last you hear from me. But by all means, I'm in need of any advice you have left to give. And I'll be checking the comments until I have to man up. If this is goodbye though, watch out for the shit that goes bump in the night. It's smarter than you can imagine, and scarier than you've read. As I was texting Kaz, I slowed for a moment. I noticed no pursuers, for the moment anyway. But I did hear the voice of the bishop loud and clear. Guess my maker wasn't the only one who got sloppy with enchantments.
You poor, sick, sad boy. Talking to yourself. Making friends with a new level. For shame.
The bishop taunts.
What's that look on your face? Actually, I guess it can't be called a look anymore, now can it? You thought your little friend was real? No, that creature in the suit is. But you've been losing it, my friend. You are one sick little child.
I hear Leo scream as the bishop finishes. It hits me.
You fucking genius,
I say, heedless of the nonsense I actually verbalized. My creator may not have given me every gift in the book, but she given me at least one I've never even thought about, despite how obvious it is. If anyone is still confused, let me explain. Remember way back, what seems like a decade ago, when I was talking about the void webs that kept me from being seen or heard? Obviously, they were a splash-dash jury-rigged solution, but they were effective. The thing was, at the time, I was thinking of things from a 1993 standpoint. A standpoint where a security camera cost $5,000 and took a month to install. But we are here in 2020. They cost a dime and are on every single lamppost, doorframe, dashboard, and other surface now. I wasn't made in 1993, or else I'd be 17 years late and burned out. My creator made sure cameras were not an issue for me. I mentally take back all the shit I've been talking about her and send Kaz a new text.
They know about you, not me. Do not come here walking into a trap. Where do we meet?
Kaz sends me directions to a shady area of town with exactly one business of note, an import candy shop. I think of taking the skunk, but it does not appear to be made for stealth. I make my way without a trace out of the house, hoping that Kaz can help me figure something out before the bishop gets bored and kills Leo. The shop stands out like a sore thumb among the other boarded up, burnt out, graffiti-covered buildings in the plaza. Not a mark on it besides the closed for family emergency sign in old-time cursive on the door. Kaz lets me in and I almost bolt out the door. The smell hits me first. A mushrooms and iron slap in the face that makes me wish I was made for hauling bricks instead of hunting folks. Then I see the dim bare bulbs, the bodies. Probably a dozen, all in various states of decay, all with pieces torn off of them, blood and organs spilling onto the thick plastic tarps they were sitting on.
Holy shit, Kaz. Think of cleaning up before guests come over?
I say, having little right to judge.
First, I wasn't expecting guests, ever. Second, get up off the fainting couch. I kill someone and leave them where they fall. I've got to kill more people, don't I? This is a conservation effort.
Kaz says, not defensively, but actually hurt. I update him more in depth on the situation, and he shakes his head with a morbid chuckle.
I hate to say it, but I have even more bad news, my friend. He knows that big malignant. He's not joining them, but he isn't joining us either.
Kaz says with a sigh.
Can I tell you a story?
He continues cryptically. I nod and let him tell his story.
You know what it's like believing in the paranormal, to the paranormal, believing in the canon, kind of like a religion meets an urban legend. Not many folks still believe anymore, but I still do. I'm too old to change and too smart to want to. The canon says a lot of things, but two really stick out to me right now. The first are the trends. You see, humans, even those that have had a brush with our kind, never really get it right. If they did, I'd be stealing kids or have springs in my feet, and you'd be a doll with some serial killer's soul in it. Real life is messier, more complicated, but if you look really closely at their art, their legends, some say you can see the trends. What I see in the trends is bigger, more earth-shattering across all the board. 30 years ago, the stories were about tiny organizations finding one or two of us every so often. Now, it's world-destroying salt shakers and unkillable beasts at every turn. It means something, and I really don't like the implications. The second thing are the threads. People, things, events that are connected on some deeper level. Honestly, I never really held much onto this idea, but I can't quite shake the feeling we in some way got ourselves into this. You and I, we both don't want to be what we are, at least not the parts that involve destroying people for no reason. You, it's obvious, you are fighting that shit at every turn. Me though, I'll never be able to avoid killing folks, and I'll never be able to have the self-control to wait for a month to find a serial killing pedophile that really deserves it. But that's not the worst of what my kind do. We bait people into ruining their lives, the lives of their friends and family. Also, they keep our pantry full. so we can eat during the year. Not that we have to, but few actually have the fortitude to deal with the pains that come with starvation. That's my sacrifice for humanity. I sell to entities, but no humans. This keeps my wallet full, but my stomach woefully empty. And the hero? He is of a non-standard mindset, just based on the fact that he didn't try to kill us both in sight. We are part of one thread. It can fray, but I believe if it breaks, that bishop asshole is going to cause toxic havoc. We can't fight him and save Leo, but I think I have a way to get the bishop here.
Kaz says as he begins typing on his phone. Quite a delicate feat with his Ginsu-esque claws. A few minutes after he sends the text, I hear a chittering noise that seems to come from every direction. A moist scrabbling, clicking that seems to drown out all other sound. The insects flood in from the vents, cracks in the wall, under door frames, everywhere. They amass themselves into a pile, and seemingly dragged up from its depths is Hive.
What is so important that you woke me up in the middle of the night?
He says.
There is a change to the deal.
Kaz says cryptically.
What deal?
I say concerned.
Don't worry about that.
Is all the explanation Kaz gives me.
We need to use you to get the bishop here.
Kaz says, turning to Hive.
Oh, that's all, is it?
The Malignant says sarcastically.
You will be totally safe. I just need something they want, and you are the only thing I can get a hold of. All I need you to do is be convincing when I call. Then you scuttle off to wherever you want till it's time to pay our end.
Kaz says this in a matter-of-fact fashion, but Hive stays silent for a moment.
You need to stop getting yourself in trouble, Kaz. I've known you for a very long time, and every few decades you find a puppy to adopt. But I'll help. Same deal as before, though. We are friends. But don't think of crossing me.
As Hive speaks, a dark gloom briefly blows through the room.
You will get what's yours,
Kaz says, bringing out a cell phone.
You have the bishop's number.
I say cautiously. Something about the tone of the conversation is making me a little paranoid.
No, I was hoping Hive would be able to help.
Kaz says, looking towards the other doll.
Of course! Why don't I just go fight him myself while I'm at it?
Hive says, shaking his head as he pulls a small, special frog-like creature from within himself. Hive makes a short chant in a language I've never heard, ending it with twisting the frog-like creature, pouring its blood and viscera on the floor. After a few moments, it begins to run and coagulate into a series of numbers. Kaz dials.
Listen, I'm done. I have better things to do with my time than get in the middle of this pissing contest. If you want to come down here, I've got a peace offering for you.
Before Kaz turns the phone towards him, Hive wraps himself up in his own limbs, rips and tears forming on his rubber skin. He starts to shriek and plead in a long dead language.
My life for his. You know the favors you could gain with him as a bargaining chip? Me? I don't even have a stock for you to take. It's the smart move.
There's a long pause before Kaz nods and says,
Okay, be here in an hour.
Hive dissipates into a cloud of flies and mosquitoes the second the call is over.
It's go time, kid. Can you access that skunk from here?
Kaz says hopefully. I try, and for a moment I feel just out of reach. But after a second or two of concentration, I can feel that connection. And that little bit of my energy travels across town, sparking life into what is our last option. At this distance, more of it is being controlled by the strange pseudo-intellect than myself. It's less like I'm controlling an RC car, more like giving orders. It doesn't feel like true sentience, just enough instinct to complete a task and send back information.
I think I'm good,
I say nervously.
Okay, where you hid that pistol, I put a little surprise for Leo. Getting him to that is your only chance of getting him out of there.
Kaz says grimly. I sit on the floor and concentrate on the feedback and sensations from the proxy. My mind is filled with rage and hatred that makes my joy at killing look like mild curiosity. I'm constantly fighting down red, vicious thoughts of wholesale slaughter as I try to figure out the sensory input. Its senses are much more dull than mine, and its body, while much heavier than my own, lacks the spider's grace that I begin to rely on. Both of these things combine as I sneak the proxy out of the attic.
You stay here with the Suitenkinder. I'll take the twins to go make that deal with that stretched out idiot.
He says, I'm guessing to the large malignant. I look out a doorway and watch the three of them leave, both myself and the proxy getting a nauseating burst of adrenaline when we realize this is the point of no return. I make a mental note that there are 20 of the smaller creatures, and at the same moment, a flickering digital counter appears in the proxy's vision. Slowly, with plodding steps that sound like dropped bricks, I walk the proxy in front of the door to the basement. I let loose a warbling electronic roar made from the recorded screams of executed murderers and wait. Mechanical form clattering and heaving as I prepare for the first unfortunate entities to open the door. A little voice in the back of my mind tells me that if the giant bastard is the first one up, I'm likely screwed. But that's another problem for another time. The door flies off its hinges, a corner gouging the bone shoulder plates of the proxy. I stand my ground, meeting the gaze of 4 creatures that cling to the doorframe. To describe them as a group would be useless. They were all small, dark, and wicked, but their forms ran the gamut, from multi-limbered and arachnid to like black tube of flesh and teeth. They had the numbers, but I was the bigger, harder phallus in this pissing contest. There is no banter, no threats, just a dark wall of claws and teeth leaping at me from the doorway. The first creature, I grab by its ovoid face and close the vice grip on the proxy's claws. Its body goes limp and begins to liquefy as the second, looking like a cross between a snake and a crab, lunges at me. It ensnares my body, but with a flick of my blade-strewn tail, the thing bursts apart in time to soak the last 2 in gore. They die via the massive carbide teeth the proxy has, in 2 bites that are quick enough to land before the unholy forms of the creatures hit the ground. 16, the counter reads. I look into the basement and see more of the things starting to come down the hallway. I leap the stairs and land in front of them, gears and servos straining and protesting. This thing really isn't made for acrobatics. 3 attack in unison, and I'm taken off guard. The combination of claws, barbs, teeth, and sap-like bludgeoning limbs come from every direction. Fur flies from the proxy. I lose the bone plates protecting one knee, and a blow so fast it cracks like a whip sends me face first into the wall. I hear a click and can feel, even through the distance, a cold chill goes through my flesh and soul. A second later, there is boiling rage as one of the cylinders in the proxy engages. Flesh salvaged from malignant and other rarer things inside the proxy swells and starts to excrete a thick yellow slime, leaving the proxy slightly taller with bulging biological masses. I charge headfirst into the crowd, biting, clawing, and tearing, letting the proxy take over. The blows are much harder now. Missed claws hit the walls with the force of a gunshot, sending chunks of masonry flying, creating a deadly whirlwind of shrapnel around the deadly creation. Eventually, after what feels like hours of rending and tearing, the cylinder's effects wane. The proxy is done, what deflated, sagging, covered in gore and thick yellow slime. The counter reads 10, and they are hanging from the walls and ceiling staring at me. Leo is strapped in his chair, and the giant malignant is doing nothing other than looking directly at him. My synthetic rage costs me. The damaged leg is beginning to catch and spark. One eye is flickering, and one set of claws is stuck out, having been severely bent.
Get me the fuck out of this chair.
Leo tries to say calmly but quickly.
But be quick. It's only going to move once you try to get me out.
Despite their casualties, the tiny creatures seem to be enjoying themselves, chittering back and forth, and petulantly throwing various objects at me. I move the proxy to its absolute limit of speed, biting the handcuffs holding Leo to the chair. They shear easily enough, but I feel constricted as a larger creature, easily the size of myself, wraps its thick, almost manta ray-like body around me. I stop, tensing the real and synthetic muscles inside the proxy, getting ready to burst this thing. Too late, I realize it was a trick. The smaller creature explodes, having sacrificed itself to distract me long enough for the giant malignant to land a solid kick that blows out the internal components, shatters most of the cylinders, and sends me smashing into the wall. The counter reads 9, but there is so much static I can barely make out the scene around me. The proxy refocused and I see Leo, missing 2 eyes, 1 leg, and a lot of blood, leap from the chair and begin to grapple with the giant malignant. Sensing a shift in momentum, the remaining smaller creatures swarm me en masse. At this point, the proxy deploys 2 of the remaining 4 cylinders. The proxy begins to expel a thick yellow cloud that rapidly begins to fill the room. It hangs thick and heavy, not rising above 4 feet from the ground. Leo and the malignant start to cough. The smaller creatures, getting lungfuls of this shit, begin to bleed pink, thin blood from any orifices they may have. The proxy is failing, but my fight isn't some karate movie. It's a war of attrition. I grab, I throw, I shoulder charge, never exposing myself with a killing blow, just letting the gas do its work. Within minutes, the last of the creatures die, coughing up and defecating what passes for organs in its form. The massive malignant trips, landing face first into the microwave. There's a burst of energy, and it's thrown to the ground, alive but dazed.
Upstairs, now,
Leo says, uselessly scanning the room with his bleeding sockets. I run to him, wedging my form under the stump of his leg and guiding him up the stairs. We hear the malignant begin to rise and Leo yells, "Bathroom!" as if I'm not literally occupying the same space he is. We make it to the bathroom. Leo feels around for the toilet. He flips the lid, revealing a pistol and, just like Kaz said, a large piece of candy. When Leo feels this, he says,
"You wonderful bastard,"
unwrapping and eating the sweet. The effect is less dramatic than I hoped. Instead of being brand new and fresh to fight, the one eye simply forms back in its socket and the worst of his wounds seals shut. Leo seems unfazed and punches a hole into the plaster wall, ripping out a similar necromantic prosthetic to his previous creation.
"Always keep a spare,"
he says, slotting the leg into place.
"We got one chance."
Leo says as he removes the clip from his gun and begins to recite a beautiful prayer, or maybe a poem in a language I've never heard. He removes the bullets and places a drop of blood on them. As he does so, each seems to take on a dull shine. He loads the bullets back into the clip and slams it home.
"Pray to what you pray to, Punch. We come out of this bathroom heroes or bloodstains,"
Leo says. I assume that it is likely to be the second option, as he couldn't kill the creature fresh as a daisy with a supernatural gun, let alone half dead with a pea shooter. The malignant tears off the door like he's opening a soup can. Leo fires, and any thoughts I had about the gun not being effective are as evaporated as the large pieces of the malignant the bullets are taking. The barrel heats past red hot as Leo keeps firing, the malignant chest a ruined mess. The last bullet exploding the front of the gun and sending the giant creature through a wall.
"That's not going to keep it down forever,"
Leo says, running out of the bathroom.
Doesn't have to. Kaz has a plan,
I say as we run out of the house. Leo picks up the nearly destroyed proxy, and I let my mind drift back to my form. Glass and wood shatters as I come to in the store. I'm undetectable, but Kaz is in a brutal battle with the bishop and the twins. Large pieces of Kaz's body are missing, flayed as if with a whip. One of the twins is missing an arm, the other is moving slowly, but the bishop seems unscathed. The twins stay close, swinging at him with brutal pointed hammers in each hand. They work nearly perfectly in tandem, driving Kaz back as the bishop lashes him with those seemingly endless tentacles. Time to take some wind out of his sails. I may not be made for a straight-up fight, but that's not the situation I find myself in. I move like a ghost behind the bishop, sending a blade straight up his groin. It sinks in up to my wrist, and I retract as the old crone screams in pain, kicking out and slashing with a thin barbed tentacle. But I'm far enough away it misses, and it gives Kaz the breathing room he needs to land a massive overhead blow on one of the twins. The fleshless thing hits the ground and is obliterated by a stomp that costs Kaz a nasty hammer blow to the head. I dash in at the bishop again, burying a blade in his knee. He was more prepared though, and a whip-like appendage connects, sending me into a wall and reminding me of exactly how much things can hurt in my real body. Kaz has given up any form of defense at this point and is just trading blurred powerful blows with the remaining twin. He comes out the victor, but one arm is useless and his face is a mangled mess. He walks towards the bishop, who is hurt but much fresher than either of us. I try for another run, but something inside of me isn't right. I can't move well enough. I'm feeling weak. At that moment, the door of the store bursts inward. Leo tosses the proxy at the bishop, and I'm quick enough to send a bit of myself into it. I manage to gouge and slash and pound the bishop bloody before he grabs the proxy by each limb and tears it apart. He's worse off, but not nearly out of the fight. He walks towards Leo.
Just you and me, again, old man. I've always wanted to say this, but you should have killed me when you had the chance.
Leo goes to rush in, but is sent flying forward. How the giant malignant snuck up so quietly, nor why it didn't have a scratch on it, is a mystery I don't think I'll ever solve.
Stop!
I yelled.
Spare me. The hunter gave me a weapon, but I'm done. It's yours if you let me go.
For a moment, I think the giant isn't smart enough to grasp what I'm saying, but it looks to the bishop, who nods. The creature holds out one massive hand. I reach inside of me and pull out the keychain, placing it in the creature's palm. In an instant, it begins to thrash and bulge, its form cracking and bursting. The bishop senses something is up, and with a growl he leaves, but not before slashing a massive chunk out of Leo's stomach, as he was distracted by the monster. Leo falls to the ground, and I notice Kaz slumped against one wall with the malignant in the room becoming larger, darker, more armored and imposing. I run to Kaz, who is holding out another candy with his one good arm.
Your choice, kid. You're going to need one of us to take care of Badar. I'd like it to be me, but I'm a little biased. I had to make the deal to give you the choice.
He coughs up a thick liquid that I assume should not be coming from his mouth. With an almost sexual moan, the malignant finishes its transformation. It's now tall enough that it has to hunch over in the room, and wide enough I cannot see across the store. Its face shows more intellect, cunning, and rage than I have seen, and it focuses that on me.
Next time we meet, I will treat you like any other insect standing in my way. But now, I am joyful. It has been too long since I've had my true form on the mortal plane. Do you feel this deal is fair?
Badar says, ready to crush me should I say no.
Very much so.
I say, feeling weaker by the second. Badar doesn't even try to get out the door without tearing it from its hinges. Bricks topple and glass shatter as he makes his way out of the shop. I walk to Leo and find that, no matter what, all I can manage is a slow plod. I hope to see that his wound isn't as bad as I thought, but as I stand beside the hero, it's actually worse. I can see a loop of intestine hanging lazily from the man. I try to talk to him, but he is too far gone with shock and pain to answer me. So that is where we are left. Maybe for the last time, something inside me is giving way. Both my friends are dying, and I can only, maybe, save one. The evil prick was whipped, escaped, and while I have no ideas as to its motivations, I have a feeling that we may have released something just as bad into the world, trying to kill the bishop. I need help. Who do I save? What do I do? This might be the end, and if so, I tried, guys. I really did. With warmest regards, IED.
One of you once asked how things would be if I were watching this entire exchange. Well, rejoice. I've been watching every last word. It's been interesting seeing your theories and opinions on my work. But you and the little pipe bomb himself are quite off the mark. I'm no mere alchemist or summoner. I am a scientist who isn't afraid to delve into realms science fears to go. Am I petty? No, I simply have no time for those stupid enough to annoy me. But laugh if you will, I'm on the verge of breakthroughs that will be the envy of researchers and warlocks, and I can guarantee you will get to see them firsthand. Keep thinking I'm some basement tinkerer. It will make my quest so much easier.